Hey everybody, this is the Pioneer Student Trustee Forum. My name is Brayden Nguyen. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Pioneer at Cooper. That's our student newspaper, if you have never read it. We're here to get the two student trustee candidates in front of you all so you know who you're voting for and sending to the Board of Trustees for their interviews. Let's start with introductions with Adriana.
Hi, my name is Adriana Amelia Gomez. I am a second-year student in the School of Art. My pronouns are she, her. I think that's it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Riley Howard. I am a first-year student in the School of Architecture, and my pronouns are they, them.
Cool. So the first question that you probably answered like a million times by now, but I think speaks a lot to trustee candidates is why did you personally come to Cooper, and how do you feel about your time here?
Starting with me, right? Okay. Let's see. I transferred actually from public university in Ohio, and before that I transferred to that school from community college. So I had like a range of experience from different institutions, but Cooper stood out to me because, I mean, the students are very involved in their education. There are a lot of unique opportunities for students to be involved in everything from the Board of Trustees down to like the governing body, everyday curriculum kind of thing. And that was one of the biggest things that attracted me to Cooper, in addition to the small class sizes and the studio culture of the architecture school was really what brought me here.
Okay. Yeah, so I actually also transferred from community college. One of the main things that attracted me to Cooper, if I'm honest, was like their need-based aid. It's pretty good. I got a good scholarship. I wouldn't be able to afford it if it hadn't been for that. New York City is amazing, and I'm like so privileged to be going to this institution. It also has one of the best and overall most rigorous design programs in the country, so that really attracted me to it.
Cool. And I guess just like going forward from that for Riley, how would you describe the student culture at Cooper?
Student culture at Cooper. I have only been here for like less than a semester, and it's all on Zoom. So please take my experience with, a grain of salt. But so far, considering the circumstances, I mean, there have been a lot of opportunities to get involved and get to know other students. And for that, I'm like endlessly grateful, because it would be very depressing to be out here in Ohio studying remotely and to not know who my colleagues are. But there have been a lot of just like student council events that have shown me the culture. Outside of that, it's been hard because I am in Ohio. I don't really know what regular school at Cooper Union is like without a pandemic. So, but I like it so far considering the circumstances.
Okay. Gosh, what is the culture at Cooper like? I would say everyone is very focused. It's definitely not like other institutions where people are just there to just like get a random degree. It feels like everyone is there for a reason and they have a goal in mind, and they're very committed to that. So that is one. And I think overall, the goals that people are committed to are generally like for the better. Like I think everyone that attends Cooper has an understanding and like a drive to like truly like make the world a better place, as cheesy as that sounds. But I think that's really rare, and I don't think many schools have that type of culture.
Yeah, and to follow up on that question, for Riley, what is your ideal vision of Cooper's mission and how the board should guide the school?
My ideal vision for Cooper's mission and how the board should guide the school. Honestly, I mean, it really comes down. I've been like reading a lot of our like reports on money and stuff, so I feel like it would require a lot of transparency, some of which is already there, and probably more communication between the board and the student. And it's hard because I've only been here a semester, so it's like I only know so much, but I guess I envision it as us like reaching the plan and like continuing this past the end of like the decree of consent, continuing this process of students being very directly engaged in every aspect of the institution, and especially on the board of trustees, that continuing past the point of getting to free tuition, because free tuition isn't just this like check the box, we're there. It's something we're going to continue to need to work for, requiring like good management, which we've lacked for a while. And I feel like we're in better hands now, but before Laura, there wasn't really, and really before like the lawsuit happened in 2014, there wasn't a lot of great management. So I feel like we're on the right track, but it just has to keep going for like, I mean, way into the future if we want to keep Cooper Union on the mission of being not only a free institution, but like an accessible institution for everyone.
Yeah, I agree with Riley about the disconnect between the board and administration and the student body. It seems that there really just is no communication whatsoever, and we saw that a lot when it came to the pandemic. I mean, we all had to wait like an incredibly long amount of time to get any answers, and even now, like I still don't have my belongings from the school, you know. And I understand that that's not like a trustee issue to solve, like it's more of the people like under, but still, I mean, it's all related. Um, Gosh, can you ask the question again? I'm sorry, I drifted.
Oh no, don't worry. So the question was, what's your ideal vision of Cooper's mission and how the board?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, of course, like free education, but also I think just creating an environment at Cooper where students actually feel like they have the institution's support. And I don't see that very often. I think a lot of students are like apprehensive to go to administration or even just financial aid for help because they, for the most part, like just give you attitude and not helpful. So I understand that that's more of like an administrative level, but I still feel like that's really important from all, I guess, all scales of the institution could really work on that.
And then to follow up on that, what is the role you envision creating for yourself on the board?
That's for me as well. All of these questions will be for me first.
Yeah, sorry, that's my bad.
I don't want to like jump in if it's for Adriana. What role do I envision myself fulfilling in the board of trustees position? Really, I see it as this opportunity to be like a transparent line of communication between the board and the students. Obviously, like legally, like abiding by the non-disclosure agreement, but just encouraging a communication between these two parts. And just from my experience, my limited experience here at Cooper, like poking around at what is available online to see what is the board up to, where are we getting money, how are we spending money, it's hard to really like find the information you're looking for. So to make that process easier for all students, so it's not just this big question mark of we don't really know where we're at in the plan. And you know, it's great that Laura is communicating that with us, great that President Sparks is communicating that, but I feel like there's a disconnect in really knowing how we are actually standing and whether or not our standing in regards, like not just monetarily, but in other areas, is it sustainable? And so like really being blunt and honest with fellow students about where we're standing and being able to answer questions, making it less of an inaccessible communication, if that makes sense, translating what's happening in the board into, you know, normal everyday language so that we all are on the same page.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to use like the word like representation, because I think it's quite impossible to like represent the entire student body at Cooper through like myself. But I do think that, you know, from a lot of conversations with friends and from just like general experience, like I have a pretty good grasp on what is going to benefit Cooper students at the end of the day. And, you know, if I'm chosen for this position, it would be because, you know, you guys trust that I would make the right decisions for you all. Yeah, and that you trust my judgment on that.
And that leads into my next question. Why do you believe that you're the best candidate for the job?
That's a really good question.
I was dreading this question.
Good one. I mean, I believe I'm the best candidate because I really care a lot about this, and I feel I'm almost like obsessively curious about what and why things are happening the way they are happening at Cooper Union. And at first I was surprised by my own curiosity, because on face level, on the superficial level, the Board of Trustees position, once you really look into it, it seems a little bit mundane, to be honest, because it's a lot of going to board meetings and reading reports and, like, you know, going to committee meetings and making sure that we're on track. But the more I look into it, the more interesting it is, because all of that plays a role in how Cooper Union is going to function next year, or 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 30 years from now, and like 100 years from now. So it's really intriguing on that level for me. And, you know, so passionate wise, I feel very passionate about it. And it almost feels like an opportunity to carry out the legacy of the students who protested in 2014. I mean, it is, and it's also an opportunity to carry out the legacy of Peter Cooper's vision and realize that and hold people accountable. And then just personally, I'm really not afraid to speak up. I mean, being a first-year student has been very fun experience to just jump in on Zoom, and, you know, my classmates can attest that I have been the one like breaking the silence in all of the Zoom calls, just like saying what needs to be said, sometimes in ways that people don't want to hear. So I'm not afraid to speak my mind, even if the questions I ask can sometimes come off as stupid or, you know, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But I think those questions are important to have with the Board of Trustees, because if a student who is a member of the community doesn't know what's happening, then how is this serving the community? So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to start off, like, I think we're both like really strong candidates, and there is a second like upcoming election. So if one of us doesn't get it, like, I feel we're both like really committed to running again. And I think it would be so cool to have like an architect and an art student both running for the committee, or like just as student trustees. But I think for me, like, this isn't anything on Riley's part. Like, I think I just have like a better general grasp on the Cooper experience and on the students, just because I've been here longer and I physically have been in the school. So I think that, like, that's just like an advantage that I have. But I'm also just like, I've been very committed to free education for a really long time. I used to teach, I tutor kids on my free time and prepare them to like basically transfer from community college to like higher art institutions and get financial aid, because that's really important to me, just like accessibility when it comes to education, which is not something that you see very often in this country. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I'm so committed to the plan at Cooper. and why like I chose to go here, just because I really believe in the mission of the school. And also, gosh, I'm sorry, I keep drifting. Yeah, like, look, I'm just like a really intense person, and when I want to get something done, like I get it done, and I really want this position. I think I'll be great. I think that something I've seen from a lot of the things that, basically like the issues that are brought up at Cooper, is that people talk a lot about it, but nothing really gets done. And I just really want to be someone that hopefully gets something done for you guys, because I think that's necessary. Yeah.
And I know the two of you have mentioned free education, but what would you say, besides free education, is the biggest issue that impacts students at the school that you could tangibly impact?
Can I go first for this one? I feel bad that Riley keeps having to go first.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
That's okay with me. Yeah, it just seems like unfair. I think there's a few. I mean, I know, like with the current protests and everything that's going on, like racial issues were like a really big issue, and I'm not sure what the conversations at Cooper look like. I know that police is no longer allowed on campus unless it's necessary, and that they implemented anti-racist training. I don't know what that training looks like. I don't know if it's the trustee's job to know what the training looks like. I think it's just more of like on the hands of administration. So that was a big one. But I think something that I saw a lot from my first year that I did not see anyone really talk about was just how little help Cooper offers to the first year students when it comes to transitioning into the school. I saw a lot of students that, really struggled to pay for materials. And because of this, they fell behind on classes. And I also saw, like kids that actually just like did not have a meal, just because Cooper was like, okay, yeah, here's a kitchen, but like no freaking meal plan. So I think that's something that like I haven't seen being addressed, which is really surprising because it feels like just such a basic necessity. And I think something that was really inspiring was that I saw a lot of, students like feeding their friends and like having their back and being like, hey, did you eat today? Like, come over. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's not the students' responsibility to keep their friends fed. It should be the schools. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of these nuanced issues that aren't being brought up. And, at the end of the day, like the trustee only can do so much, especially because I feel like the issues that they're dealing with at such a higher scale. But I think also like through the community, through the committees that the trustees are joining, like they can definitely, offer solutions for that.
So besides the free education, which is, central to our mission as an institution and as a community, I feel like, I'd have to sort of echo what Adriana was saying about like anti-racism on campus. I know I haven't been on campus like in this semester, so it comes with like a limited experience, but being at other institutions, it's an issue that is in every institution. The issue of racism on every institution, the issue of white supremacy in every institution, the issue of like hierarchy between a student and a professor that prevents them from actually like connecting about the work. So that seems like almost number one, especially since the letter that was sent to the administration. And it's not necessarily directly in the purview of the board, but the board has the ability to allocate funds to resources that can support anti-racism. So, the board can do something. It may not be able to like follow through and everything. At the end of the day, some of it needs to go to administration and down to faculty and sort of go into these other areas. But the board has the ability to budget, which actually, you know, matters for a lot of these things. And besides that, I mean, being a person from the outside, I mean, I'm very new to Cooper Union, so I'm coming in with an outside opinion, but I think it would be really nice to see more accessibility in Cooper Union's curriculum, because especially as an architecture student, it's like constantly being berated with this idea that like, if you're not able-bodied and you can't do this like this, then you don't belong here. And that's like, it's so hard because I mean, I love architecture, I love art, and I love the Cooper Union, and I love the expectations that of like greatness that are put on us as students at the Cooper Union. But a part of me wonders, like, who are we leaving out if I don't see any disabled students in my classes? And it's just it feels isolating, and I wonder like how many people are left out of the conversation, out of our curriculum, out of our like community, just with that alone. And I can't exactly say what resources are or are not on campus because I haven't been to campus to experience that. I've only visited once, but I can imagine that, you know, the physical boundaries that might be there might be the same as some of the curricular boundaries that I've experienced. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So this is a bit of a pivot point. How do you handle a heavy workload? Adrian.
How do I handle heavy workload? I think foundation year, if there's one thing I learned, it was definitely time management the hard way. I think I handle it quite fine. I mean, just break it down into bits, try to make it easy for myself, pull an all-nighter if I need to, you know, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to do my best, and I wouldn't be at Cooper if it weren't for that. So yeah, I think I handle it just fine.
Trying to think of like, I mean, I feel like I do so many different things to handle it. It's not like one thing. It's like, well, what of the tools? Which one of the tools am I going to pull out today to deal with the workload that I have? But honestly, I just have like personal self-care practices that I do on a daily basis that keep me grounded and help me remember that, like, yes, school is very important and my education matters very much and my obligations and responsibilities in my life are very important. But if I'm not, you know, confident and centered in myself, then how much can I serve another person? And that has kind of like guided me ever since I started at community college. It's like, if I'm not like, you know, eating okay, getting enough sleep, taking care of myself when I'm sick or not sick even, like, then how much help can I be to another organization? So it really comes down to that for me. And when I have a heavy workload, I just like cut out distractions and do what I have to do to get it done and do what I can to minimize the consequences of whatever could happen, you know, minimize the amount of sleep I could lose, minimize the amount of meals I'll miss. It's just like, get the most done in the most effective way with the least amount of consequences. That's the motto.
I really feel that. uh, yeah.
It's hard too. Oh my gosh. It's a practice, right?
Yeah. Going back to moderating. How do you personally amplify your own voice to make change when, I guess, like times are tough, when workloads are heavy, and when you're really tired?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. How do you personally amplify your own voice to make change, especially when times are hard, when you have like a lot of work, or in your like in an unfamiliar room?
It's a really interesting question. It's interesting. It's like an interesting sort of situation you've set up in the question, but I'm trying to think, like, my go-to is to like reach out for support in those times. If times are tough and I am faced with a situation where maybe my safety feels compromised or something is challenging and I need to speak up about it, my go-to like first option is always like seek support from others so that they can affirm what I'm feeling. And it's often hard in those moments because, you know, there's so much self-doubt, and there's also, if times are tough and I'm burdened with work, then there's high chance that I may not be taking care of myself as best as I could be. So that's when reaching out to other people and having a support system is so important, because I can like tell them what I'm thinking and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's totally valid. That person is definitely doing XYZ to you. Or they'll be like, no man, you need to go to sleep. You need to do this. Like, you need to take a deep breath, go meditate. And yeah, that's my easy answer. So thanks.
Yeah, I feel like my brain is like going over scenarios of like what you mean by tough. Well, I think for me, like when I'm doing something, like I very much just focus on that. So even if I'm like very stressed with work, it's like, let's say I'm in like a trustee meeting, like I'm there, you know, all of my attention is like placed in that moment. But I don't feel that I have much of an issue with speaking my voice, even if other people disagree. I'm like a very honest person and just really upfront about that. And I know that like the other trustees are like much older and these like successful people that went to like these Ivy League schools, and nothing about that intimidates me, you know. I'm just here to, I guess, just like offer whatever I have to help other people.
And I guess beyond amplifying your own voice, how do you personally go about amplifying the voice of the student body?
Wait, can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
How do you go about amplifying the voice of the student body as a trustee? Not as a representative, just as yourself as a trustee.
I have a lot of discussions with other students about difficult situations, and that's always helpful. Even just for myself, like for my own perspective as a trustee, I'm not necessarily going into those conversations thinking like, oh, what does everyone else feel? Not fully. I think a lot of the conversations themselves like really shift my perspective and like inform my own opinions that I will then, you know, bring into the meetings. That's the way I go about it.
I think it's really important to maintain good judgment in communication with others, because as a trustee and also as a student, I'm imagining myself in that role. I would want to, you know, vote and speak in the best interest of students, but it's like at the end of the day, it's what benefits the mission of Cooper Union. At the end of the day, it's what is sort of in line with Peter Cooper's vision for our institution to be, you know, a place that is accessible and a place of free tuition and free education. And so, I mean, like I would want to listen to them and hopefully, you know, find ways that I can speak and act on another student's behalf when possible. But if it goes against the mission of the Cooper Union, then I would be like, okay, well, even if it was my own opinion that went against the mission, and I wouldn't even vote on it too, because it's like that's not why I'm here. I'm not here for my personal interest. Um, but I would hope to be like as helpful to students as I could. But at the end of the day, it's like, is that issue going to align itself with our vision and our mission statement and our goal to be this like not just free but accessible and open institution? So,
Cool. And to follow up on that question is this comes up a lot. So, context, I'm not sure. So we talked about some board issues on the other end sometimes. Um, do you feel like the way
it's kind of hard to hear you.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, a little bit.
Here, I feel like there's reverb or something, but
Sure. Might be with the dorm Wi-Fi. Can you hear me okay now?
yes.
Cool. Nice. Okay. Do you feel like the 10-year plan to free tuition is sustainable?
I have no idea because I know nothing about finance. If someone could explain it to me, then maybe I could have an opinion on it. But yeah, I really cannot comment on that, if I'm honest.
I have mixed feelings about the plan. I love it, and it's very ambitious. And reading it, it's amazing thing to read. If anybody hasn't read it, just like skim it, because it's like, wow, this is very ambitious. And at the end, it's like, we need to raise $250 million by 2029 in order to reach our goal of free tuition. And it's amazing, the fact that they were able to put their heads together on behalf of, a lot of students protesting to get that thing written, that kind of loose promise plan. But I am a little bit doubtful, I guess. And my biggest doubt is in like where our revenue is coming from, and is that source of revenue sustainable? Just like from looking at how we did in like the fiscal year of 2020, it's really interesting because most of our money came from the Chrysler building, and also from several alumni who died and who just like left quite a bit of money for us, which is great because we're on track now. But we can't just keep hoping that alumni die and leave us a bunch of money. So it's like, I love that we're on track, but I'm sometimes skeptical. When I've read the letters to the students from President Sparks that say, we're on the plan, we're on trajectory. I'm a little bit skeptical, I guess, because it's like, I want us to get there, but how can we get there in a sustainable way that we can continue offering free tuition past 2029? And I also know that like the reason that we are okay right now is largely because, well, first of all, like the plan, and also because of those sources of revenue, but those aren't going to happen every single year, because the contract with the Chrysler building was like just renewed. So that's why we got a bunch of money. So I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I'm hopeful, but I'm also critical of it and wondering, how can we be more realistic, I guess.
And to follow up on that question, as we develop throughout the 10-year plan, how do you think the board should or the board of trustees should serve the students?
I mean, based on what the board is able to do, I think it's really important to listen to what the students need, financially, and not cut out any sort of program or resource for a student who really needs it, even if it means that we're going to be at free tuition, 1 year earlier or something. So, I mean, that's really important. And just like honest communication with us, because my biggest worry is that as a student, I'll just be like, oh my gosh, we're on this 10-year plan and soon we'll be there and we'll have free tuition. And the reality is that any of that could change at any moment because our revenue relies on these not unstable, but somewhat unreliable sources that are not consistent. I'm especially talking about the philanthropy. So, having that communication with students, I think is really important to be like, yeah, we're on track to the plan, but here's how and here's why. But yeah, being dedicated to not cutting programs that we actually need to, being frugal, but not so frugal that it puts us students at a disadvantage,
Yeah, no, I think Riley really had that in the bag. I think you worded it perfectly. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And now we talked about this earlier about how there are only 2 candidates right now. How would you drive interest from the student body into the Cooper community, similarly to positions like the student trustee?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, it's written out as participation in the Cooper community has been decreasing over time. How would you drive interest from the student body into similar things like this student trustee position?
Yeah, I think again, it really goes back to that disconnect between the students and administration. I think a lot of students don't feel like they really can create any change, or they have much to offer to the institution, or the institution is against them in some cases. I've heard that being passed around often, and to an extent, I don't agree, but I can understand where they're coming from, especially because I think Cooper lacks a lot of transparency with their students, which is a big issue, especially when it comes to creating trust. But I think also advertising it more, I wasn't super aware of the student trustee position until a friend had to told me about it. So that's another big one.
Yeah, I can only echo that. The advertising, I think, is really important because I didn't even know about it until someone else told me about it. And I got an email, but somehow it just got lost in the sea of emails. So, I mean, advertising, of course, and also just maybe more hype, I guess, for the fact that this exists, because I mean, I'm sure Adriana can agree, coming from a different institution, this was not even something, we could have dreamed of at the place that I used to study at, Bowling Green State University. It's not common for this sort of position to exist in colleges or universities, for a student to not only be able to sit in, but to be able to vote. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible that we have that. And I know it's only because the students who came before us that protested in 2014. So, really getting, hyped about that, I guess, and not just advertising, but spreading information about how this position is really in line with what Cooper Union is. I mean, it's at the core of our identity. It's part of our vision as an institution. It's a really important position, honestly. And when you start to get excited about that, it's wow, this is connected to all of Cooper Union, both past and present and future, because this will impact the future students, but I'm also carrying the legacy of those that protested before and of Peter Cooper. And it's unique, it's awesome. So just like spreading the hype about it. I don't know how to do that exactly. Maybe we could show movies about how great it is and the importance of free tuition, and like have more communication between the student trustees and the student body, more transparency about like, you know, what the experience of this position really is.
I would love a movie night.
No.
Cool. Moving on. All right. Okay. How have you interacted with students in other schools, or how do you envision yourself interacting with students in other schools as a trustee?
I think it's really not that different. Like, I think at the end of the day, like as a trustee, you really have to not represent everyone, but you know, like I'm not, just because I'm in the School of Art does not mean that I am the trustee for the School of Art. You know, I'm the trustee for the entire population at Cooper. So I really don't see much of a difference. And when it comes to the decision making, I feel like, I mean, I don't know, I haven't been in the rooms or heard the discussions that they're talking about, but I don't think it would be so like catered to like one specific institution over the other. I think it would be more general. So I think it will not be that difficult to do that, if that makes sense.
So I will say it's been difficult to sort of put myself into the Cooper Union community during this semester for obvious reasons, but I will be on campus next semester. So, you know, I don't really know exactly what that'll be like because I haven't been on campus during the pandemic, but, you know, we'll see how that goes. Aside from that, I think it would just be my commitment to like go to as many, not only like school-wide events, but also like specific events to say like the engineering school or the art school, and connect with students in those spaces. So they know who I am, but I'm also not just like this random person trustee that, you know, I'm friends with other people. I also think that's just important as being a student at Cooper too. It can be very easy to sort of like bubble ourselves in. And I've done this before, and I'm sure there will be moments when I do it, but you know, it's easy to become sort of just surrounded by people who think like us. But we have this unique school where we can just like step right over to the art school and think about something in a completely different way, or step over to the engineering school and think about something in a completely different way. So, you know, I would see it as a challenge for sure, especially considering the state of the world right now, the state of like weird hybrid learning, but it's a challenge that I'd want to meet, and I'd hope to be really accessible to all students. So, yeah.
And to follow up on that, I think one of the very few silver linings of the pandemic is that people are thinking a lot more about communication. They were kind of forced to kind of think out of the box when we're thinking about how to get ideas across. How would you foster communication as a student trustee, and I guess build up trust between the student body and the administration?
Wait a sec, did the audio cut out?
No, we're both just thinking.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. No, I get it, I just had to make sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really an issue that like everyone is dealing with right now. Like I'm working for the Saturday program right now, and like all their students like just don't turn on the camera. So it's been difficult, and I can imagine it's really difficult for, professors as well. But I do think that like the students themselves have really been fostering just like a really supportive environment between themselves, and constantly reaching out to friends. And I do think that that is a time when like the student trustee would step up to do that, just because you already kind of have that foundation of trust that you don't really have so much like with administration, because there is that hierarchy at the end of the day, and there always really is going to be, even if you like however much you want to play it off as there isn't. It's just unrealistic to have that like same line of dialogue that you would with a friend that you trust. So I think that would be a really important moment for us to step out in that role and to be there like for the student body.
I'm trying to think of like what has gotten me through this semester, and honestly, it's been these like moments of communication with my peers when suddenly we're just completely honest with each other about maybe how hard things really are this semester, and we just get real with one another. And I think continuing to have that sort of communication, not just with the people I'm in classes with, but extending it out would be really beneficial. And it's as little as just like reaching out to somebody being like, hi, we both go to Cooper Union and I really like your work, and go from there. But just like making yourself vulnerable to being connected to other people, it's really hard, but it's like the only thing that's gotten me through this pandemic so far, especially this semester, connecting with other people who are first years, who are second years, third years, and so on. And not just in the architecture school, but then connecting with people who are in my other classes outside of the architecture school has been like, honestly, it's like the only thing that's got me through. So it's almost like if we don't do it, then we're not going to survive. So we're going to have to keep doing it. And I guess for myself, I would just, I think at first it's just like, just show up to these student events, make yourself sort of vulnerable and say who you are and say, hey, I'm the student trustee. If you want to know about, the fact that we just had minutes that were posted, just talk to me about it or not. So I think it will require that, just putting yourself out there without fear of being rejected.
Since we have 7 minutes left, I'll ask a question about the future. How do you envision the role of the student trustee changing after you're done with the position?
I mean, hopefully we'll no longer be in pandemic times. Let's start there. Hopefully it'll be easier for the following. I mean, whoever gets it, I know we're gonna have like a difficult time doing this hybrid thing, and it's really also really difficult to communicate with the student body when it's so scattered and everyone is experiencing such different circumstances right now. So I'm hopeful that it will be easier for whoever steps up after us. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would hope that by the time, like 1.5 years from now, because the position lasts 1.5 years, that there would, first of all, be a lot more communication about the position. And, I would also hope that like, by that time, the expectation would be like just a lot of communication between the board and the student trustee and the students. And I almost like, I know most students probably don't want to, but I feel like it'd be great if like at the end of the day, stepping down from a position like that there could be an expectation of like just sort of like making the knowledge, the doings of the board knowledgeable for everyone. So there's not any sort of question of what is the board actually doing. And there's not this like, I guess, burden on some student's part who wants to know, you know, well, what's actually happening with the plan or the budget, or what's really happening, and they don't have to sort of translate everything that's online. Although I will say the transparency so far is like honestly better than I've seen anywhere else. But I feel like we can continue to grow from that. We can be more transparent. We can have more conversations. And I feel like that's another thing I would want if I were elected. I would hope that by the time I step down, that like having conversations about what's happening with the board, how the board is spending money, what the board is talking about, where we're at with the plan. These are just like, you know, everyday things. And maybe they are. I'm not on campus, so I don't know if they happen in a regular school year, but you know, it's not something that's really come up in conversation between me and other students yet without me bringing it up first. So it'd be great if it was more of a common thing to just talk about.
And lastly, is there anything that you'd like to say about yourself that I haven't asked about to finish off?
No,
Go ahead. You go
I'm
first.
kidding.
I feel like I was gonna say something important, but it kind of like left me. I feel like I've said most of what I needed to say. The only other thing I wanted to say is like, I don't know, I'm really just interested in economics, and aside from like the real reason that this position is so important, you know, the economics of the Cooper Union is really intriguing because it sort of reflects how our values are really actually happening in real time. And I would just really, my goal, my commitment, if I was elected, would be to make sure that our values are being represented financially as much as they are when we speak about them. I mean, it's one thing to talk about a value. It's another thing to, you know, budget money to be an anti-racist institution. It's like, so what are we actually doing? So that's what I want people to know is like, I honestly just want to make sure that, you know, at the end of the day, the way that we're spending money aligns with what we believe in. And yeah, I feel like anything else that someone would want to know about me, please just reach out to. I'm accessible. I can also like share my information in the chat or something. I think we're also going to have like a website that you can like find us on. I'm not sure, but I will share my information if anybody wants to reach out to me, because I'd be happy to talk about anything really.
Okay, now my real answer. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm always accessible, and I really don't have a whole lot to say about myself, if I'm honest, but this is my first time meeting Riley, and you were so wonderful. You did great. And I think whoever gets this position like would just be really good for it. So I don't know, I'm excited. And I do hope that like, yeah, I hope that obviously one of us is gonna get it, and then we'll run again, and then hopefully we can have it together. I think that would be awesome. That's my parting note.
Cool. Thank you too so much for your time. For everybody else, voting starts tomorrow. Watch out for a nondescript campus notice. There will be a link with the short bio for the two of them and a link to vote. Voting closes on Wednesday, November 18th at 5 p.m. Everybody who has Outlook, you can only vote once per like Cooper email address. So make sure to get all your friends to vote. All right. Thank you so much for coming. Good night.
Thanks.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.